You're one unexpected email away from everything changing. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you haven't done the one thing that actually matters when the economy shifts. If you're watching this, subscribe now, because what I'm about to show you is something most people realize too late. Here's what I keep seeing. People with good jobs, decent savings, doing everything they're supposed to do, and then the layoff happens. And suddenly none of it was enough, because they built their stability on the wrong foundation. Let me tell you what I mean. 3 months ago, someone I know, let's call him Marcus, got laid off from a tech company. 6-figure salary. Had about $15,000 saved. Thought he was being responsible. He wasn't panicking at first. He'd find something in a few weeks, maybe a month. That's what everyone says, right? The job market is good. He had skills. He had experience. 2 months later, he's draining that savings. Interviews aren't converting. And he realizes something that changes everything. He doesn't actually know how long his money will last because he never tracked where it was really going. Most of his friends? Same situation. Good jobs, decent savings, but no actual system underneath it all. The scary part? Marcus was doing better than most people. Here's the thing nobody tells you about layoffs. The problem isn't that you lose your income. It's that you lose your income and you don't actually know what you need to survive. You know your rent, your car payment, the obvious stuff. But what about everything else? The subscriptions you forgot about. The habits that cost more than you think. The small expenses that aren't small when you add them up. Marcus thought he could last 3 months on $15,000. He barely made it to 2. And here's what made it worse. He was still spending like someone who had a job coming next week. DoorDash twice a week because he was stressed about interviews. New interview clothes because he wanted to look sharp. Keeping his gym membership because he needed to stay sane. All reasonable decisions in the moment. All bleeding his runway shorter and shorter. So here's what you need to do right now before anything happens. First, know your actual monthly burn rate. Not what you think you spend. What you actually spend. Go through the last 3 months of bank statements. Every transaction. Every swipe. Every auto payment you forgot existed. Add it up. That's your real number. For most people, this number is 20 to 30% higher than they think it is. Marcus thought he spent $4,500 a month. His actual average? $6,200. That difference is why his timeline fell apart. And look, I get it. Going through bank statements sounds tedious. Sounds like homework. But you know what's more tedious? Running out of money faster than you expected and having to make panic decisions about which bills to pay. Do this once. Spend 2 hours. Get the real number. Because that number is the foundation of everything else. Second, build your runway based on reality, not optimism. The standard advice is 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. Fine. But 3 to 6 months of what expenses? Your full lifestyle? Or the bare minimum you could survive on if you had to? There's a massive difference. Marcus could have stretched his money to 3 months if he'd known which expenses were actually negotiable. But he didn't figure that out until he was already 2 months in. By then, the stress was affecting his interviews. The desperation was showing. You know how interviewers can tell when you're desperate? It's not what you say. It's the energy. The eagerness that crosses into need. The way you respond too quickly. Agree too easily. Companies can smell it. And it works against you. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the emergency fund is about having money. It's not. It's about having time. Time to find the right job, not just any job. Time to negotiate, not accept the first offer out of fear. Time to breathe instead of panic. But you only get that time if you know exactly how long your money will actually last. And here's the other thing. Your emergency fund calculation needs to account for the fact that you're going to spend more when you're stressed, not less. People think they'll naturally cut back when money gets tight. Sometimes they do. Often they don't. Stress spending is real. Comfort purchases are real. The I deserve this mindset when everything feels hard? Real. So when you're calculating your runway, be honest about your actual behavior under pressure, not your ideal behavior. Third thing, identify your drop-dead budget. This is the number most people never calculate, and it's the most important one. What's the absolute minimum you need to keep the lights on, rent paid, and food on the table? Not comfortable. Not normal. The emergency version. No subscriptions. No eating out. No unnecessary purchases. Just survival. Write it down. Know that number. Because if things go badly, that number is what tells you how long you can really hold out. Marcus never did this exercise. When his money started running low, he was making decisions in panic mode instead of from a plan. He was cutting things randomly, canceling the wrong subscriptions, keeping expenses he should have dropped, making it all up as he went. When you don't have a plan, you make expensive mistakes. Like keeping a $200 car insurance payment when you're barely driving because you forgot you could switch to a cheaper plan. Or staying on a phone plan that made sense when you had income but doesn't now. These aren't huge numbers individually, but they add up. And they add up fast. Now here's where this gets real. That emergency fund everyone tells you to build? It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Because layoffs don't happen in isolation anymore. When companies start cutting, they cut in waves. Your industry contracts. Hiring freezes spread. It's not just you looking for work, it's everyone you used to work with. The market shifts. And suddenly that 3-month cushion you built? It's not enough. Because finding a job isn't taking 3 months anymore. It's taking 4, 5, 6. I'm seeing this everywhere right now. People who thought they'd bounce back quickly are now in month 5 of searching and running on fumes. Not because they're not qualified. Not because they're not trying. Because the market changed while they were looking. So the fourth thing you need, and this is the one people skip, is what I call a reality fund. This is different from your emergency fund. Your emergency fund covers you if you lose your job. Your reality fund covers you if the entire market changes and it takes longer than expected to get back to where you were. How much should be in it? Honestly, more than you think. If your emergency fund is 3 months, your reality fund should add another 3 to 6 months on top of that. I know that sounds like a lot. It is a lot. But here's what I've learned from watching people go through this. The ones who make it through without derailing their entire lives aren't the ones with the highest incomes. They're the ones who had the longest runway. Money buys you options. Options buy you peace of mind. Peace of mind lets you make better decisions. Marcus could have taken the job he actually wanted if he'd had another month of runway. Instead, he took the first offer that came through because he was scared. It's a fine job. Pays okay. But it's not what he was hoping for. And now he's starting over at a new company, proving himself again, building credibility again, when he could have held out and landed something better. That's the real cost of not having enough saved. Not that you can't survive. It's that you can't thrive. One more thing, and this might be the most important part. You need to know what you're worth outside your current company. Not what you think you're worth. What the market will actually pay you. Most people find out their market value at the worst possible time, when they're unemployed and desperate. That's backwards. Start having conversations now. Casual ones. See what recruiters say. Check what similar roles are paying. Update your LinkedIn. Keep your network warm. Not because you're planning to leave. Because if you have to leave, you want to know where you stand before you're forced to find out. Marcus found out he was actually worth more than he thought. But he didn't find that out until he'd already taken a lower offer because he assumed his previous salary was lucky. He left money on the table because he didn't know his own value. And look, I'm not saying you need to be constantly job hunting. That's exhausting and counterproductive. But once every 6 months, take the temperature. See what's out there. Have a coffee with someone in your industry. Let a recruiter tell you what people like you are getting hired for. It's information. And information is power when everything goes sideways. Here's something else nobody talks about. You need a separate account for this money. Not your checking account. Not mixed in with your regular savings. A completely separate account that you don't touch. Don't even look at regularly. Because if the money is accessible, you'll convince yourself you need it for something else. A vacation. A new car. An investment opportunity. There's always something. But the moment you start justifying reasons to dip into your emergency fund for non-emergencies, you've already lost. Marcus had his $15,000 in his regular savings. Same account where he was saving for a house down payment. Same account he'd pull from for larger purchases. So he never thought of it as untouchable. It was just money he had. When it came time to actually rely on it, the psychological shift was harder than he expected. Put it somewhere separate. Make it inconvenient to access. Give it a specific purpose that you don't compromise on. Marcus is fine now, by the way. He found a job. Took 4 months total. But he told me something that stuck with me. I thought I was prepared. I had savings. I had a budget. I thought I was doing everything right. But I wasn't prepared for how it actually feels when your safety net turns out to be thinner than you thought. He's building differently now. Bigger cushion. Clearer numbers. Real plan. Not because he's paranoid. Because he knows what it's like to not have one. And here's what he said that really hit me. The worst part wasn't the money stress. It was realizing I'd been lying to myself about how secure I actually was. I felt stable. But I was one email away from chaos. That's what I want you to avoid. Not the layoff itself. You can't control that. but the chaos that comes after. You can absolutely control that. Look, I'm not trying to scare you, but the economy is doing what it does. Companies are optimizing. AI is changing how teams are structured. The job market is different than it was 2 years ago. You can't control any of that, but you can control whether you're ready or not. And being ready doesn't mean being paranoid. It doesn't mean living in fear. It means having a clear-eyed understanding of your situation and a plan that matches reality. Not the reality you wish you had. The reality you actually have. So here's what you do this week. Calculate your real burn rate. Know your drop-dead budget. Figure out how long your money would actually last. Then decide if that timeline feels like enough. If it doesn't, you know what to fix. Start building that cushion now while you still have income. Put systems in place now while there's no pressure. Make the plan now while you can think clearly. Because when the email comes, and it might or it might not, you want to be the person who's ready. Not the person who thought they were ready. The person who actually was. And if you found this helpful, leave a comment. Let me know where you're at with this. How many months could you actually last if everything stopped tomorrow? Because the more we talk about the real numbers instead of the ideal ones, the better prepared we all are. This stuff matters. Your stability matters. Stay here. This channel exists so you don't have to learn these lessons the hard way.